Hi, welcome back. It's nice to see you all again. I want to spend some time talking about a couple of different things, starting with employee support, and we're going to get a little deeper into one part of employee support and maybe less deep into others, and then also empowerment within disability management. There are many ways to provide support in disability management, and so we're going to talk about a number of them. Employee support kind of broadly consists of many, or employee support within disability management broadly consists of many different approaches. So one would be prevention. And I'm going to go more specifically into these, but how do we prevent disabilities from occurring, or how do we kind of start on the back end to make sure that people are in a good place? Early identification, things like different tools that are available and resources that are available through the disability management program to help with employee support. Accommodations are another means of employee support, and then social support, which I think is a really fun topic given that we are rehabilitation counselors and we'll be talking about that. So, for starters, let's move on to, there we go. Let's move on to prevention. So just kind of talking about what exists in terms of how we manage disability management, one of the common ways to approach prevention is employee assistance programs. So EAPs. These are very common. We've talked about them before. An EAP can provide counseling and treatment referrals. And an EAP, depending on kind of the services that they provide, but they can provide things like substance abuse treatment, occupational stress management, emotional distress management, helping people cope with major life events like the birth of a child or, different stressful things. Can help people with concerns that they have about healthcare or financial or legal concerns that they have. Family or personal issues, right? So this is not just workplace focused or workplace related, because somebody who's approaching disability management in a proactive way is going to recognize that a person's home life or relationships are going to affect how they work as an employee. And then, of course, work relationship issues, which kind of makes a lot of sense within disability management, but that's not the only thing that an EAP is going to provide. Another preventative approach that is often taken are wellness programs. The University of Sydney has a wellness program that includes a number of things. They have, of course, we have like sports and fitness access. We have mindfulness meditation that happens once a week. So there are all of these things that the university is implementing as a preventative way to kind of hopefully, prevent disability from occurring. So wellness programs can include exercise, they can include meditation. This could be stress reduction techniques. This could be smoking cessation. And there are a lot of different things that can kind of fall under a wellness program. Interestingly enough, one of my cousins is she has a PhD in public health, and she's teaching a class on wellness programs. And so, like an entire semester on wellness programs and talking about different wellness programs within public health, right? Because, for example, smoking is a huge issue, or obesity can be a huge issue. And so how do we kind of preventatively make sure that our people are as healthy as they need to be or can be? Next slide. So another kind of way that we support our employees, or that disability management professionals can support employees, is through early identification. Actually, I want to go back to prevention just briefly. What did I want to say? Another means of prevention, and this is something that we talked about a long time ago this semester, was that prevention can also be identifying an issue and managing it. So, for example, noticing that people often get hurt in this particular position because they are, doing this one activity, then maybe we can modify that. So, if we're saying, like, if somebody's working in a factory and it is, turning from one side to another with something heavy, well, maybe we can modify that. Maybe we can get them something to help them move from this side to that side so that they're not, twisting their back, right, which can be really, really dangerous. So how do we kind of, work to prevent disabilities or injuries from happening through kind of that different, or through kind of, how can we prevent them through different modifications we can do in the job? Something that I think about, and I'm going to kind of reference this study that I did a number of years ago a couple of times in this because I think it's really fitting. But we were doing a project on reasonable accommodations, and one of our participants worked in a casino, and his job was picking up bags of coins, and bags of coins are incredibly heavy. And he hurt his back by picking up these bags of coins. And of course, I'm sure you all know that back injuries are very difficult to see or to treat, especially because they tend to, like a ruptured disc can, heal or look healed, but the soft tissue around it can still have problems, and you can't really see issues in soft tissue. And so back injuries can be very complicated. And so he had this kind of complicated back issue. And I mean, if you think about it, lifting something heavy like these big bags of coins, like what a disability management person could have done is gone in and say, hey, how do we support you in this? Do you need, to have the cart that you move the coins on to be at the same level as the, casino machines? Or, what can we do to reduce the likelihood of injury in this instance? Because he was one of 12 people on each shift who collected coins from these machines, right? So there's a lot of room for injury. And so a good disability management program is going to say, hey, how do we make sure that you have kind of what you need? And that really does come down to employee support, right? Because imagine being the person in that instance, right? So you're either, your coworker has gotten hurt, and the response is either that company treated that employee terribly, they didn't do a great job with this, but their response was terrible. But what you could do as a proactive employer is say, hey, we need to do something about this. How can we best support you? Or I have these ideas for supporting you. I would like you to wear this back brace. I would like to provide you with carts that can be raised or lowered depending on the height of the machine that you're working with. Something that can help with that issue. So that to me, sorry, I should have gone back, because that to me is related to prevention, right? Making sure that we have kind of, or we are doing things to prevent injury from occurring. So early identification, so identifying potential risks or potential issues early on, and then taking preventative measures before something happens. So the example that I just gave was reactive, right? Somebody got hurt and they could have said, let's, get you this, assistive device in some way, so that not the person with the back injury, but so that the other people don't get hurt. But what is good for early identification is looking at what there could be as an issue and saying, hey, you know what? It wouldn't be that hard for us to order something that, or order a cart that has a way to raise and lower that cart, the height, right? Thereby reducing the amount of lifting you have to do with these coins, right? And so we are going to, before anybody gets hurt, manage that, take preventative measures, and kind of address these potential issues. The University of Sydney does a really interesting job of this, because I've never been in an institution where this was the case, but I've had it happen many, many times here, is that in meetings, one of the first questions that's asked is, does anybody have any workplace safety issues that they'd like to discuss? And so, in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, somebody brought up that the bus stop outside of the Lidcombe campus is broken regularly, like the glass is shattered. And so they were saying, that's an issue of safety for our students who are coming to campus. But like people are looking around and saying, hey, how do we make sure that this is a good working environment? And the university is interested in what people have to say because this is reported kind of up the line with the idea that at some point somebody will do something about it. How accurate that is, I'm not sure because I don't know what happens at the top, but this idea is that, or the thing that has been surprising to me is that this is even a part of the conversation, which I think is very impressive. So to me, that kind of is both preventative and part of early identification. So making sure that we're doing a good job. Tools and resources. So I thought this was really cool. So there are different tools and resources that can be supports for individuals who are taking part in a disability management program. So I think, if you think about everything that you do nowadays and how much easier it is to access things online reporting. So, for example, at the University of Sydney, there's a program where if you've sustained an injury, you go into this program and you note that you have. And so that is then sent to the disability management team and they respond accordingly. And so something like that, online reporting and online claim tracking can both be really useful aspects of disability management. Something that I thought was really interesting was Cigna is insurance company that's very large in the United States. I don't know about their presence in Australia, but they're huge and they provide disability management services to companies as part of, a package that they can pay for. And so they're talking about the technology that they provide to support return to work. So they have a database of different types of transitional positions that can help the disability management provider help find someone a transitional employment until they're able to return to their general job, right? Because transitional employment can also be an important aspect of disability management. Another one is that they have kind of a database of, best practices in disability management, and so people can count like what they're doing against or like what physicians are doing to figure out what kind of accommodations will be needed, right? They have all of this extra information that is really helpful. And then they have this case management system, which would be, theoretically online reporting, online claim tracking, right? So that process is simplified for the employee, which I think is really cool, right? So I just thought that I would just include that little piece of the Cigna disability management advertisement that they do, because they're saying, hey, look at these tools that we use. There are also assessment tools that are important in disability management, but we won't talk about those right now. What's next? Accommodations. So part of employee support is providing accommodations. And I've talked about this in kind of a couple of different ways, and actually I'll talk about it in a little bit, but providing accommodations is really important in disability management. But the way to be proactive as an employer is to provide accommodations to everyone, regardless of, whether or not they're asking for one for a documented disability. So I think the cool example of this is, I think I've said this, is the University of Sydney, saying these are how you ergonomically work, right? And then I remember a company that provided everyone with ergonomic keyboards and an ergonomic mouse, right? And so these are little things that can help prevent kind of carpal tunnel or whatever. If you're kind of looking and typing all day, that can be a problem for you, and it can be hard on your wrists and hard on your hands. And so they're saying, hey, how do we manage this before it becomes an issue? Accommodations, whether they're in response to an injury or a disability, or whether they're in general, they need to be clearly identified, and they need to be effectively managed and maintained. So one of the big issues, for example, with multiple sclerosis is if you have something like relapsing remitting MS, and almost all cases of MS ultimately end up relapsing remitting until they become just kind of primary progressive. But So, if you have relapsing remitting MS, every relapse is going to take you just a little bit further, and there is some level of protection, or not protection, but kind of stepping back of the symptomology, but it's kind of this progressive experience, and so accommodations may need to change regularly. And so being aware of that and managing and maintaining them is really important. Also knowing what the legal obligations are in terms of the employer regarding accommodation. I just had another important thought regarding accommodation, so just give me a second to think. Accommodations, legal, maintaining accommodation. It's going to come up, and I don't know when, but it probably won't be during this lecture. Accommodations should be clearly identified, managed, and maintained. Oh, I'm sorry. Accommodations can also kind of vary depending on how they're implemented. So, an accommodation for an invisible disability is going to look, is going to be harder to manage in an employer or in an employment setting where we are very kind of straight and by the book and everybody has the same experience. So if somebody has an invisible disability and they need some sort of accommodation and the manager comes in, the disability management person comes in and tells the manager might have some pushback, and even if the manager doesn't have the pushback, if it's something that's visible, the employees, the co-workers may have pushback too. So the visibility of a person's disability can kind of be impacted by, or can have an influence on how accommodations are taken by colleagues. Another issue that can help, that can kind of change how the accommodation goes is how the coworkers are affected. So if a coworker is, there's kind of your, run-of-the-mill jealous coworker. Why does, Sally get to get up and do whatever, or get a standing desk, or why does Sally get whatever? But then there's also the issue of what if we need to reassign some duties. The person who picks that up is going to be affected to some extent, and they can kind of be a little ornery about that. And so that kind of goes back into, and this is going to fit really well with what we're about to talk about, which is social support.